What's up, everyone? Let's go. I am your host, Bobby Jones, also known as Mr. Brightside, the man with the plan here at the Extra Mile podcast. And today we're taking a stroll down the Extra Mile with my friend Sascha Milara, and you will hear from her right after this.
Your success is on the other side of your comfort zone. See, that's the difference between me and those other guys. I wanted it more than they did. I wanted it enough to get uncomfortable. I wanted it enough to go the extra mile. Do you want it bad enough? Do you want it bad enough to go the extra mile?
All right, guys, we are in here. I know I probably peaked right there because I'm loud as fuck, but it is what it is. So, guys, we're going to get into a cool episode of the Extra Mile podcast today because, as you guys know, when I have these episodes, I really like having organic conversation. And today, we're doing that. I've met Sascha on Clubhouse probably 6 months ago or so, 4 months, maybe?
No, I think it was probably about three
months ago.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not very good with time, but whatever. And so we really haven't had a great opportunity to really get to know each other yet. So we're going to be able to dive a little deeper today in this episode. But first, before we do that, Sascha, if you'd like to say hello to everyone and introduce yourself to all of the people listening to this episode.
I'm usually at a loss for words in these scenarios because
Really?
it's what do you say about yourself, right?
Yeah.
But my name is Sascha. I am a photographer, and I am here because I am really not meant to do anything else. I couldn't hack it as a bank teller, couldn't do it in HR, and I sure as hell can't see myself spending the rest of my life funding auto loans at a 24% interest rate thinking I'm helping people, right? So I am just on this journey to live my insatiable lust for life and leave a lasting impact on people. What I really hope genuinely, wholeheartedly along this journey is that everybody I'm around loves themselves just a little bit more when I'm around. Ooh. Like that, like how I remember on your episode with Mike Faber where he was asked, does anybody breathe easier because you're around? And I'm like, goals right there. Life purpose, goals. I just want everybody to just breathe easy because I'm around. I want people to love who they are because I'm around. I want people to feel like anything is possible because I did it. And I genuinely feel like if I can do it, they can do it too. If I really think back to who I was, how I've gotten as far as I've gotten, I'm like, man, if I can do this, there's
anybody can.
Yeah, really, genuinely, anybody can.
Yeah. And it's crazy because I think, us as, entrepreneurs, business leaders, anybody that takes that leap, really, we feel that way, right? Because we feel like at some point or another, we were counted out. We definitely weren't the perfect fit, the perfect mold for this, and yet we're doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's huge. I will say too, the first time you came into one of our rooms, right? Or I had contact with you on Clubhouse, that whole aura around you just from conversation was exactly what you're intending. You really bring positive vibes to people. And I think there's just, a tremendous amount of value that goes with that because there's too many people in this world complaining and presenting negative vibes. So when we have that refreshing experience with somebody who's just living this positive lifestyle, it is wonderful. So You're doing that.
Well, the thing is I spent so much time in that negative, victim, I don't even want to necessarily say mindset because to me it's a lifestyle. Yeah. It really is. You do have two choices every morning when you wake up.
Interesting.
And
what
I think is really funny and kind of I think something that really led me to do this after I talked to you because you're I really do in-person guests and I'm like, you know what? I need to do this. I don't know why, but I need to do this. And it's funny that you say, on your intro, I wanted it bad enough because I have this sign that I had my friend made because she has perfect handwriting and my handwriting is just garbage, right? That says, how bad do you want it? Mm-hmm. And every morning I wake up and I look at that and that's that's kind of how I pursue my day every day. And I think I don't really tend to notice it as much anymore unless like my subconscious tells me I need it. But I pursue every day in a manner of like, how bad do I want this life? How bad do I want to experience things? How bad do I want, this person to know that they are worthy of what they are pursuing? How bad do you want it? How bad do I want this freedom, this time freedom, this creative freedom, this life that I think internally deep down, like how you were saying, you're like, I knew I was meant for bigger things, but I thought I was crazy. I was one of those people. I was like, man, there is something in me. I don't know what it is. I don't know how I'm going to bring it to fruition, but there's something here. And I kind of let people tell me that it wasn't and just kind of fell into that, like, poor pity me, like, my life is awful, like that victim lifestyle, right? I fell into that hole and bought into all those, pick something more realistic, kind of things. So,
yeah. It's funny you say that. First of all, I know this to be true. And we've had this conversation last year when we had Taylor Clark. You met Taylor. Yeah. We had Taylor on the show. We talked about like there's so much that like men do to women that we talked about a lot about in that episode. I'm not going to dive too deep into it, but guys, please reference that episode. It's really kind of cool. I've got some really interesting theories. I have 2 daughters, right? So I've got to be like really hip to this stuff and like super aware of what I think is coming for them and like what I may have been guilty of in past relationships, and so that they can be aware of it. And it was really interesting to have this idea of like, men really have the need to be, or the natural instinct to want to be superior in the relationship. And it sucks because that's not a healthy place to be. There's plenty of people, and we had Steph Priest on this podcast, and her husband, super supportive, but Steph's out here building this huge business and like really, really building an empire. And he had to kind of take a back seat with his business to allow her to do it because it had so much momentum. And I wonder how many men are secure enough to do that. Right? Like how many men are truly secure enough to do that? But we got way ahead of ourselves. So what I want to do here real quick. So Sascha came all the way from freaking Utah to be here in person, to be on the Xtra Mile podcast and handle some business in the area. So really want to give you a big shout out for that. And a big thank you from the whole Xtra Mile audience because it means a lot, right? Us bringing high quality guests to the episodes is one thing, but bringing it in person so that the quality of audio and everything is clear enough for people to hear it properly means a lot, because there's nothing worse than technical difficulties when you're trying to connect across the country and deliver a high quality podcast at the same time. So let's go back a little bit, okay? Because I know that we jumped right into, entrepreneurship, knowing that things weren't right for you, but that didn't happen overnight, right? Like, let's talk a little bit about that journey to where you are today. And as we do that, there's going to be moments where I know that there are big takeaways in what you learned through that experience. Stop and pause and share that with the guests or the listeners, because those are the things that people really need to hear, right? Because there are aha moments for us every single day. And if we don't stop to like share that with people, like we were talking about earlier, right? If we don't stop and share that with people, then we're doing a disservice too. So let's talk about your journey up a little bit and take us through as deep as you want to go into a dive of your climb into where you are today.
Well, I know, I'm like, where do I start? Because, I don't want to spend forever on the minute details.
Sure.
You want to cut straight to it. I would say really my journey began as a kid. My mom put a camera in my hand. I took to it like a fish to water. I fell madly in love with just the process, right? And that was when you had film and, you didn't have like the ready opportunity to like see your image and go, oh, okay, I need to fix this and this. And I hated the technicalities of it, right? I refused to understand like aperture, and really only photographers are really going to understand what I'm saying, but like shutter speed and all that. And then as a kid, I was just creative. Like I would be cutting up shirts and sewing them into something. Like I made my mom, and I have to thank my mom for a lot of this because she was just a really good sport. I made her like this dress out of like material and yarn because she was like, okay, if you're going to cut up the shirts I'm buying you, let me just get you some material and hand you a needle and thread and let you go crazy.
Yeah.
And then, I've always needed a creative outlet. I've always been a creative individual. Like, you know, I've painted, anything and everything artistically, I've always been drawn to just naturally, like art, I'm there, you know, and my parents ended up getting divorced, and due to just some situations, we ended up living with my dad, and him and I are just two very different people on two very different wavelengths. So the arts with him weren't necessarily like encouraged, nurtured. Sure. And it was an opposite conversation, right? It was like, well, Sascha, why can't you pick something more realistic? You know, you're not really going to pay your bills that way. And, you know, and I started to listen.
Right. And real quick, I don't want to interrupt you there. I think it's important for people to understand that, you know, when this happens, it's natural, and they actually, most of the time anyway, our family really means well. They have great intent, right? They're not trying to dissuade us from our dreams and like, you know, encourage us not to pursue something, but they're also coming from a place of their own self-limiting beliefs, right? Yeah. So like they didn't believe that they could go off and be a photographer. So who the hell do you think you are?
Yeah,
to
exactly.
Think you could go off and be a photographer? And maybe he didn't think a photographer, but whatever it was that he, you know, thought about doing that he didn't do and wanted to pursue the safer, more.
Well, he wanted to pursue, like I asked him once, because he's worked for Smith's and he works for Walmart now, at least as far as I understand. And I asked him one day, I was like, hey, Dad, like, what did you want to do? Like, is this the plan that you had for your life? Because I know he's not happy doing what he's doing. He hates going to work every day. He loves his day off, you know?
Yeah.
And that was kind of a life that I never wanted to look forward to a day off, but I didn't know kind of like what that life meant, if that makes any sense. But he wanted to own a pet store. I'm like, well, Dad, why didn't you do it? And he's just like, oh, well, you know, there was and he starts listing off, you know, reasons to him. But to me, I'm like, okay, that's a limiting belief. And I'm doing this inside my head, right? And I'm just kind of thinking like, okay, but you could have, you know, and I watched my mom sacrifice the photography dream because I know that that's something she wanted more than anything. And, you know, like I watched her go for this interview to be a forensic photographer because like that's her thing, right? Like she wanted to go down that route.
That's
and
super cool.
I remember as a kid having this conversation with her and my dad. I'm going, well, Mom, but we can make it work.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and she's like, no, honey, you know, the pay's too low. And I'm like, just take the pay cut. We can make it work, you know? And looking back now, I'm like, okay, so this seed has been here for a while.
Yeah.
I just didn't water it.
No.
Like I didn't water it. I didn't put it out in the sun. I didn't nothing. Right. Yeah. So
that's big too. Like to be able to have that kind of awareness at that age, you know, and I think obviously like, you know, it's very, fairy tale-ish, right? Like, you know, it's very fairy tale-ish to think that we could just like, you know, do whatever we want in life. Like, but to a certain point, like we do need to embrace that mindset. And it's crazy for you to have had that awareness at such a young age. And now it's crazy too, because obviously we've put it out there that you're a photographer. And I'm like thinking, okay, is there some like I owe this to Mom in there anywhere?
Oh, I do. I owe so much to my mom. Like she bought every book that I was of every subject I was interested in. She bought every material, every, you know, little spool. They call them spools of thread, right? At least I hope I'm right.
Spools.
You know, whatever those are. I was like, I just know how to thread the needle, okay? And she, you know, she took me to every dance performance. She was there front row to every play that I was in. You know, she really... And I think deep down, like my mom accepted my choices. She did, you know, like when I went, you know, down the HR route or I went to be a bank teller, and I continually denied like what I truly wanted out of life. And I didn't necessarily realize it at the time, but I know my mom did. And my mom like accepted my choices, loved me for who I was at, you know, same with my grandpa. Like those two people in my life, like I do not think that without the way that they loved me, that I would be the individual that I am, that I would be like sitting across from you right now if it wasn't for them, because those two people I think genuinely, wholeheartedly saw my potential, accepted my choices at the time. But when the opportunity presented itself to be like, look, Sascha, you're kind of selling yourself a little bit short here. Like, you know, have you tried this? You know, like, and really, you know, kind of gave me that opportunity to know that I wasn't crazy, right? Even though I wasn't listening, they told me I wasn't crazy, even like, and when I say not listening, it's that, you know, I'm sure along your journey, you kind of fell into these pit holes where you're like, okay, I'm making money, I'm paying my bills, but why am I so damn miserable? Like, is this my life? Is this my end game? Is this going to be me at 40? Am I dying at 25 and just patiently waiting until I'm buried? You know, like what is this? But then at the same time, you're like, not like, okay, where's the answer? Like, what's the answer here? And you're just like me, I was struggling to find the answer so much that I didn't just follow the process.
Right.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So, you know, those two people, like I owe so much to my mom and I owe so much to my grandpa. Like those two people, like from the bottom of my heart, thank you.
Yeah.
Like so much love, so much respect.
I love it. So going to the point where, okay, like you're working these other jobs, like you're doing what you feel like you have to do. How does it process through to you pursuing finally what you really know is your true calling and what you want to do?
So funny story. So I'll kind of start a little bit at the beginning. So I started working at 14. Yeah. Like I've always been kind of that independent, like go-getter type of person. So I started at 14, you know, and just kind of went through all different jobs, like food service, retail. Like I have tried it all, office, call center, like all the things, right? It wasn't until I went to a concert because I am a major music junkie. Like concerts are my thing. Like I love music.
You gotta come to Firefly then. Here in Delaware.
Deal.
Yeah.
I am down.
Awesome.
Like 1 year alone, I saw 76 bands like in a year.
Shit.
Like that's
all right. Well, we don't have 76, I don't think, but we'll get you the details on that. Go
Deal.
ahead.
I'm so down.
Big music.
Yeah.
Right?
So really big into music and, you know, obviously a big passion for photography. And it was so random, right? I went to this concert and I'm not sure if you're familiar with The Used, but they're local from Utah and they made it huge. Like,
okay.
Yeah, The Used are known like everywhere. And I was at their concert and I'm standing so this type of concert is like a bar kind of thing. So you've got like the main floor and then you can go up around and you can watch the show from there. And I was standing there with a friend and I saw a photographer and it was literally like an all-consuming light bulb went off in my head and it was like, oh, I can do that. And I'm just I'm losing my mind, right? Like it's so weird, but I'm losing my mind.
No, it makes perfect sense. Yeah. That's
and
the
I'm
aha moment.
Yeah. And I'm like, I can do this. And so I immediately after the concert went home and I researched it, right? And upon researching it, it was basically saying, quit while you're ahead. This is going to be really difficult for you. But I was like, nah, I got
Fuck
this.
that.
Yeah. I was like, yeah, well, like it was kind of like, okay, you know what? Just go for it. And worst that can happen is I'm right back to where I was before the show. Right. And I was so gung-ho about it. So I figured out.
Can I say something real quick? So it is so bizarre how like we look at things and we're like, oh, that's going to be hard. Let me not do that. What? The shit that we're doing now is already hard. Like people are like, oh, it's going to be hard to do that. It's not hard being broke and miserable. That shit's difficult as fuck. Like you got to motivate yourself every single day and convince yourself every single day to actually go into work because you hate your job that's not difficult. Like, all of it's hard. Being fucking broke is hard. Being fucking successful and happy is hard. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just like I had to convince myself not to call in sick to work every morning.
Yeah.
Like I used to like my ex-fiance, like poor guy, I would cry on the phone on the way to work at times because I was just like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
I'm so miserable.
There's no way to live.
You know, and poor guy had to sit there and listen to it. But, you know, like, so I'm already here. Might as well as try something that's less miserable. And so I bought my camera. I researched lenses, and I bought a lens that like was the prime, for concert photography, like a prime starter concert photography lens, because, you need one that lets in the most amount of light because, well, if you're shooting a concert, there's not a whole lot of that.
Yeah.
So
I'm learning a lot about cameras, and I actually got a whole lesson from Brandon and Kendall about aperture and frame rates and everything like that last week. But the lenses are holy shit are expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what in the world? I bought these cameras and I was like, oh man, these cameras are super expensive. They got here, they didn't even have lenses. And when I got looking at the lenses, I was like, holy shit. So I know nothing about cameras, but I know that the lenses are the most expensive part and probably the most important part.
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Like,
yeah, because you're going to get a different type of picture. You're going to capture like summer wide angle. You've got your fisheye lens. You've got your prime lenses. You've got your zoom lenses. You've got your like... Yeah.
Lots of options.
Oh, so many options. And each one particularly tailors to a certain type of shoot. And then, you want, if you're doing sports, you're going to want these lenses. If you're doing weddings, you're going to want these lenses. If you're doing concerts, you're going to want like these type of lenses. And, so reflecting on the expensive part, sometimes I'm like, why did I have to pick such an expensive passion? But like, all in good humor, right? But, so I got all the things. I got a laptop. I had never had a laptop before. And I was just like, okay, 1, 2, 3, go. So I started emailing all the local promoters in Utah because there's really no other way to start than by contacting people, and you've got to shoot a show. Yeah. Like to expect to be able to come in and get hired by an artist or like a production company or like what have you, you have to, develop your portfolio. And I didn't know any local bands at the time other than one. And they're still really good friends of mine, and, I still capture their shows to this day. But so I started emailing, and everybody kept telling me like, no, oh, we've already had one. Thank you for your time though. And, so I probably messaged like 50 different local promoters, and every one of them said no.
Oh shit. Can I ask a question, and maybe you'll get to this, but I always thought about this, like for events and like, okay, I'm going to just let the cat out of the bag. I was at 10X in Miami in, what was that, March, right? And I was like, what if I just grabbed like a camera and just threw a shirt on that looked like the shirts that they're using for this event? Like, who's really going to stop me from taking pictures and going up there and getting all this? Like, did it ever cross your mind to like just buy tickets to a concert and just go shoot it?
Yes and no. The reason I didn't is because that's a way to get blackballed, essentially, like, because they don't appreciate you just like come, like you have like, there's kind of like a, you have to earn it kind of thing in like the kind of like concert.
They probably just don't let anybody come running in with cameras either.
Yeah,
like that,
no,
probably.
Especially with the barricade, like like if it's like a really small band, they usually don't care. Right. But if it's like when I was at G-Eazy, right, I was capturing his show, and capturing his show actually changed the trajectory of my concert photography path.
Shit.
Oh yeah, dude, it was so cool. Like, so this big artist, right, he's got #1 singles, like he's going on a world tour, and here I am, just like this local photographer from Utah. It was maybe like my 4th or 5th show I had shot, but he comes, so he's like on the other corner of the stage, sees me, we make eye contact, and he walks all the way up, comes right up to me, and that's my I guess my iconic G-Eazy shot, because what was really cool is he came on tour the next year and he autographed it, and I got to like say, like, hey man, like, thank you, for what you did, because that changed a lot of things for me. Shows started to snowball after that. But how I got started was kind of by a weird scenario. So my favorite band at the time, A Skylit Drive, was coming to Utah, and I had messaged the local promoter who was promoting it. He was the one that I hadn't reached out to yet because I didn't know who he was. So, okay, so here's 50 that I've reached out. Here's the 51st. And he's like, yeah, just come by with your camera. And he didn't say yes. So I'm like, okay, he didn't say no, but he didn't say yes. He just said, bring your camera. So let's give this a shot. So
yeah, it sounds like a yes to me.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. So I sat down with him and talked to him and was just like, hey, this is my first show, da, da, da. And he's like, yeah, okay, well, just shoot. You're welcome to shoot the show. Just show me what you have when you're done. And I'm like, so, one, it was my favorite band. Two, I got to shoot the whole show because usually when you're shooting concerts, you get the first 3 songs and then you're done. So you got to wrap it up quick. And then you've also, depending on the type of pit that you're in, you've got 6 other photographers that you're fighting in this little space trying to move around stage with and also still be respectful of.
Right. The show, yeah.
Yeah. And because, you've got to consider that they've got a job to do. There are also patrons that paid for the show, and you disturbing the show in any way kind of ruins your chances of them wanting you to come back. So you've got to be very cognizant of what you're doing, how you're doing it, and just be respectful the whole time.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, again, that's how you get they're like, no, bro, you can't shoot this. No, we don't want you here. Or security kicks you out. I've seen that happen a couple times.
Yeah. Can I stop you for 1 second?
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys. So one thing that we can't just skip over like it wasn't nothing. She said she messaged 50 promoters, guys. 50 promoters. And it wasn't any of those 50. Some of you guys are giving up after the first 3 calls. Some of you are giving up on your dream after the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th call. It was the 51st call for her that got her the shoot that she'd been asking for, guys. Think about that. You want to give up on your dreams after a few failed attempts. That's no way to do this. It's going to take numerous failed attempts, and you're going to have to embrace those failures because you're going to get a lot of no's and you're going to get a lot of failure along the way, but it's necessary and it's required.
Mm-hmm. Oh, hands down. If I would have given up at the 50th one, man, I wouldn't be here today because that's really how I started. And then so don't get me wrong, the shots I took and sent him, technically speaking, were garbage. They were so bad. But
you learn a lot since then, right? Is that what it was, or was it?
Yeah.
It's okay. So at the time, you thought they were good.
No, I didn't think they were good. I was actually scared sending them to him because I'm like, oh, he's gonna think these are shit. He's never gonna want me.
Okay, is this they were really bad, or are you just being your worst critic right now?
Probably a mixture of both, to be honest, because when I look at them from I can see the emotion, yeah. I can see the essence, I can see what's going on.
Did he like them?
Yeah, he liked them. Yeah,
which is all that matters,
right? The type of person that I am is every shoot I want. Okay, I did great in these pictures. How can I do it better?
Yeah.
How can I?
The thing is for us, we have to remember that this isn't the golden rule is, treat others how you want to be treated, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, okay, do this the way that you would do it. That's not really what our customers want. The customers want it the way they would have had it done. Right. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that we always got to remember is just because we feel it's the right way, there are things that the customer wants specifically. Look, I've put red roofs on red sided houses before, and I did everything in my power to try to talk about it doing that.
Yeah, right.
Because I knew that wasn't what I would do. But listen, at the end of the day, that's what they wanted to do. And that's happened in several other instances, right? Mm-hmm. Throughout the years, there's going to be times where a customer just loves whatever they wanted, Mm-hmm. And I think that we have to remember that there's a certain obligation as business owners and entrepreneurs that we got to do it the way they want it to be done.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that for me too, that's kind of how I've really learned to adapt to that because I don't really like having control. Mm-hmm. I really don't. I love more than anything, just people are sitting down, walking, talking, and just me just doing my thing around.
Yes.
When you and your Abby were talking and just sitting there, I was like, yes, I'm over here bending, and trying, just working around you guys and just letting you guys do your thing. That for me is what I love the most to do. I mean, I can pose you. I can, prompt you.
Yeah.
I've adapted to learn how to do that. And I love more when it's a creative collaboration. When you were suggesting things, I was like, yeah, let's do it, because I want you to love this process too. Because what I've noticed coming across is that people a lot of times tell me, they're like, oh my gosh, that was so fun. I hate having my picture taken. The photographer's so oh, that was great. Oh, okay, do that again. you know, and like, and me, I'm like, oh, do that again. Oh my God, you're so great. I love you. Like, you know, and people are like, it was so funny. I did like a series, like I did like a session where it was like one after the other, right? And I was doing multiple different girls and different backgrounds, just headshots. And it was so funny. My makeup artist that was there to do their makeup was like, you know what, Sascha, you know what you need to do? Just record you talking during the photo shoot, and then like, I don't know, like make a weird video to go along with it or something. Like you just need to record the way that you talk to them on recording. And I was just like, you know, you never think about that because, you know, you don't, I don't know, you know, like.
No, I get it. I've always thought about that. Like, how do you promote the photographer, videographer, right? So you're literally, you know, recording and shooting somebody who's recording and shooting. Yeah. And, you know, depending on how far we take that snake, but, you know, so it is kind of interesting, but you're right. Like, you need to capture that and tell that story to your clients and customers. I think it's also important for you to know. One of my favorite parts of like, and we were talking about sales earlier, my favorite part of like my early days in sales was I would record every one of my presentations, and then I would listen back to it and be like, why did I say that? Like, you know what I mean? And be able to change the things and make improvements to the way that I would handle it, you know, in the future with my customers. So there's that aspect too, you know?
Make it more impactful. Well, for me, like, I know technically I've vastly improved. Like, I know that like I can manage the technicalities. I can, you know, get better at Photoshop. Like, I know photography wise, like what I need to do to make a better picture, to, you know, do all those things. Right. But what I want more than anything is to continue to cultivate a much better experience each time, because what I am learning with my clients is that the reason they come back is because of the experience that I've provided them. Like, for example, I was at this Vegas mastermind, and so I work for Next Gen. I'm their branding photographer, their event photographer. Like, I do all things with them, as well as, you know, I don't know, like as well by myself. Sorry, I'm like what the word? But, you know, I was sitting down, and my job throughout the event was to do like a 5-minute portrait session with each speaker that we had at our events. And one scenario, like one speaker that just, man, it was incredible. He had, I guess he had a scar on his face, right? I thought it was a dimple, like genuinely, wholeheartedly, like it looked right like a dimple. So I'm talking to him, and I can tell he's uncomfortable, right? So I'm just sitting here thinking, I'm like, okay, how do I loosen you up? How do I get you more comfortable? How do I get you feeling safe? And, you know, like this is a fun experience for you. And so so I looked at him like, okay, dude, you got mad dimples. Let's get you, you know. And he's like, he looked at me, and I could almost feel his walls just kind of like, just it was like that. They just dropped, right? And he's like, it's not a dimple. It's a stab wound. I was stabbed while serving in Iraq. And I was just like, wow. You know, because for me, that exchange of his story and him feeling comfortable enough to tell me something that he doesn't tell many people isn't. And then he started sharing with me, you know, about how, you know, kind of upon his return, you know, that he, you know, didn't smile for 10 years, right? And here I am getting a ton of pictures of him smiling just by being myself, just by engaging in this conversation, giving him an opportunity to exchange his story, you know, and me genuinely loving to listen to it, because that's what I love about my clients. Like Bobby, like if I were to look at you and say, you are art to me, how does that make you feel? Like, what do you think when I look at you and be like, you are art to me?
I mean, I get that. I mean, so obviously my daughter's aspiring to be a photographer. My oldest, Ariana's an artist herself, and I'm an artist. So I get it. Like, so I did portraits, right? As an artist, I could draw.
That's incredible.
Your portrait. Like, so when I see you, right, I can literally think about, okay, I can get the face, I can capture this. And so I see the same thing 100%. Yeah. So I can relate. So maybe I have an unfair advantage. I don't know, but
yeah.
But yeah, I would definitely understand what you mean by saying that.
Well, the thing is that like, I love that though. I love when there's like that understanding. Cause sometimes when I say that to people, they're like, what do you mean by that? Like, that's a little like, so when I say that, like, for example, like I count, like I look at the lines around your eyes and I sit there and I think, how many times did you laugh? Like, tell me about the times that you cried. Like, tell me about your journey. When I look at, like, for example, like I've seen hundreds of blue eyes, right? But this is the first time I'm exchanging a story with yours.
Right.
And like houses are for freedom of expression, not good impressions. So like to my clients, don't apologize for your home. Don't apologize for your hair being out of place. Don't you dare apologize for thinking that you wore the wrong outfit. You are perfect to me. And I want to capture you right now as you are. Like, like for example, there was, I did a branding session and we had the collaborative idea for her to stand in front of the mirror. I was going to get from behind, like just kind of like your basic shot. But what really truly happened is she's looking in the mirror and she had a breakthrough with herself. She starts crying, right? Because in this moment, she just had this profound experience. And the blessing to me was that I facilitated a space for her to do that, for her to get something that she really needed out of it. And it was by complete chance. It was by like just complete situation.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know how it happened, but I know that her and I felt it at the same time.
I can definitely relate to that because today when you were shooting, obviously we've alluded to this a few times now. Yeah. So she just got done doing a shoot with me and my youngest daughter, Abigail. And, it really was cool for me because there was a lot of authenticity in the exchanges that Abby and I were having. And it was just being documented. Like, this is us. This is just us in our lives. And it was really cool to just have somebody like actually record this moment in time for us and permanently, have this like stamp of, hey, this is exactly how we exchanged, and interacted with each other.
Yeah, that's my jam.
Yeah.
Right there. Like.
Yeah. And that was super, super cool. So, all right, look, so we could talk, obviously you've been very courageous and you've taken this jump. Can you talk about that real quick? And then we're going to move into this place of what we discussed today, a lot of the self-love stuff, which I want to talk about too, because it's been a little while since we touched on that on this show. And I think it's an important thing for you to talk about with them.
Yeah, I would love to.
So let's touch base on the transition real quick, just that jump of what you did, how you decided to just say, all right, I'm out of here and I'm going to do this 100% in full time.
Oh, okay. So like taking the leap into going all in.
Yeah.
So for the longest time on top of photography, I would have like 2 jobs, 1 job, sometimes 3 jobs on top of photography. And it slowly progressed to this point where I make the leap, I'm working at a job. I love my boss. For the first time, I have a leader, right?
Ooh, yeah,
I have somebody that I profoundly respect in my leadership position and truly care about, right? So this is where it gets really hard and I'm also finally making enough money to pay my bills, right?
Ooh,
for like the first time, yeah, right? For the first time in my adult life, I can pay my bills, right? I can make rent.
No, I've really liked it. So this is cool because a lot of times we do talk about the experience of somebody who like really just hates their job, hates their boss, hates their experiences, and then makes this change. So here we are with someone who really likes their job, likes their boss, making good money, and you still make this leap. So continue.
Yeah. Well, and he was really awesome too. Like, what I really loved about him is that I could do my photography business on top of it. And he just was like, oh, okay, yeah, as long as you get your job done, I don't care if your ass is in the seat for 4 hours or if it's in the seat for 8 hours, as long as you get the damn job done. And for me, there was a lot of respect to that because, in the corporate realm, it's like, no, you are here from here to here. Yep. I don't care if you get the job done in half the time, like your ass is in that seat. And it's like, okay, all right, I guess I'll, sit on the clock. But So what happened is I was in collections, right? So anybody that's, skipped out on paying their auto loan, I, tracked them down, sent their information to our lawyers, and we sued them. And to me as an individual, that just never resonated. Like, I profoundly empathized with these people because, you're reading these notes like they lost their car in a house fire, or they lost both their jobs, or somebody got sick with cancer, right? And so I'm just like, I can't sue these people anymore.
Right, yeah.
Like, I just can't do this. Like, this is too painful. Like, I am selling myself at the door. And so I got moved into a new position that I thought somehow would make a change, right? Because I'm still not believing in myself enough that I can do this.
Right.
Even though my photography was taking off at this point, right?
Yeah.
Like, just skyrocketing. Like, I couldn't handle my inbox, right? Like, when you talk about your Instagram inbox blowing up, I had Facebook, Instagram, my text messages, like, it was so wild because here the universe is reaffirming, like, hey, Sascha, you can do this.
For real.
Just
For real.
do it.
And you're ignoring the fuck out of it.
No, totally. No, seriously, I was. So what happened is, and this was May 4th, actually, just recently, that I went in for training, and the new manager that I'm with looks at me and she's like, I'm going to need to have you leave your phone at your desk. And I don't know what snapped, because it was a very gentle snap, right? That in my head, I was like, I can't do this anymore. Because we were allowed to have our phones. I had my phone out all the time. I was working my business while doing collections at the same time. Like, it wasn't that big of a deal. Everybody else had their phones. So I sat there and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So as soon as she like snuck away, I feel like a teenager, right? Doing this, like teenager in high school, like trying to sneak my phone, but I grabbed my phone out of my bag, went to the bathroom, and I called my coach and I'm like, look, I am all in. I am here. What is it going to take? What do I need to do? And he's like, oh, so you hit fuck it. I'm like, yeah, like, I guess. And he's like, okay, we'll just, so he's like, okay, well, what are your ideas? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm like, okay, but I gotta go, so, cause, they were literally like timing me, right? I could just watch them, like, watch me. So I put my phone back in, and then come lunchtime, I grabbed the HR lady because I wanted to give them like the respect, right? And so I sat down and she's like, yeah, you're in training, so it doesn't really make sense for you to stay 2 weeks. And so I was like, okay. So, I said, thank you for the opportunity. Like, I really appreciate it. Like, thank you. And then left that day, and then packed for Vegas for our mastermind that day, actually. And just kind of just been going ever since. And I mean, it's only been 10 days and I'm still like trying to, like, I'm still coming to, like, I still am like, did I really just do that? Like, really? Because my whole life, that's not something that you did, right? But, and don't get me wrong, like, I'm terrified, right? Like, I'm sitting here going, okay, how do I pay rent now? Okay. All right. So I got to do this. Okay. Got to get this money. Like, and you're going through all the technicalities and you're like, okay, I hope in 2 months I still have food to eat. But like in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, but I can do this. I've proven that I can do it. Like, like I made more last month doing photography than I did at my cushy 9 to 5. So I'm like, okay, the universe is reaffirming that you can do this. Stop being so terrified and just go, because you've already been homeless. You've already slept on a memory foam mattress on your ex-boyfriend's floor because you had nowhere else to go. Like, you've already been there. Worst case scenario, you're back there for a minute. Best case scenario, you're right where you want to be. Like,
I freaking love it. So that's our little extra mile sound. Oh. But I just freaking love this because what's cool is all of our listeners will be able to watch this, right? Mm-hmm. So you're like, I mean, this is some cool stuff that's about to happen because we're all going to go on this journey with you, right? We're about to watch you take this climb, okay? And so you're 10 days in. I think you're on the right track. I think you're doing something that's extremely admirable. I think a lot of people across this country and that are listening right now have every reason in the world why they can't yet do it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's only because they're looking for all those reasons, right?
Yeah. You'll find what you're looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, we I don't know if I talked about this on the show or not, but I may have talked about this with you, but me and Heather, we were watching Forensic Files, right? Did I tell you about this?
I love Forensic Files.
It's an awesome show. And it's a little watch it. Knock the whole table over. It's a little bit creepy because she's like getting really good at this stuff. Like she's like, I know exactly what to do to off my husband now, but and not get caught.
No matter what, you still get caught.
I know, right? But there was this one where there was a fire and the lady came in, and I hope I haven't said this already on the podcast, but if I have, all right, you're gonna hear it again. So there's this lady who has a fire in her house and her youngest son dies. And the chief, anytime that there's a homicide or a death in a fire, they have an arson investigation. So the arson investigator comes in, looks at the fire, and determines that it was arson. They arrest the woman. She goes to jail. She gets out on bail. She's pleading the whole time that she's innocent. She hires a third-party
I think I've seen
investigator,
that one.
and they come in, they investigate the fire, and they determine that it was a faulty electric wire in the attic that caused the fire to break through the closet ceiling down to the closet floor first. And it looked like that's where the fire originated, which there was no other source, which of course made the arson investigator determine that it was arson. But here's the moral of the story. The arson investigator determined it was arson because it's exactly what the fuck he was looking for. He wasn't looking for what caused the fire. He was looking for arson.
Yeah, and it was during a rainstorm, right? That's the episode. Like there was a big rainstorm.
Oh yeah, the rainstorm the day before or some shit. Yeah, there was a stain on the ceiling, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
And that rinsed off the fire retardant chemical that was on the insulation or whatever.
Yeah, well,
anyway, So anyway, the point is like when you're looking for something, right? When you're looking for all the reasons not to make the leap, well, then all the reasons are going to show up. But if you're looking for a reason to make the leap, well, then those reasons are going to show up too. So it depends on what you're looking for is what you're going to see, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so
you'll find what you're looking for, positive, negative, whatever message is shared. You'll find one of the two reasons. Like, for example, like when you're on social media and you say you don't like oranges and someone goes off on you, well, are you saying that,
how do you not like oranges? What is wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly. Like, so you'll find what you're looking for either way. So, and that's something that I really want to share with people is that what I've noticed about a lot of successful people, and this is not to shame anybody in any way, is that you see a little bit of the start and then you see the end result. But there's not a whole lot in the middle that's really shared. And I think that's where I can provide some possible value to people is by sharing everything in between. Because for me as an individual, that's what I want to see. I want to see what happened in between. I want to see the pits and rises and falls, and I want to see the circles, and I want to see the scribble that goes, like around here, because that's what success is. It isn't a straight shot. It isn't an up and down. It's up, down, all around, back, forth. Like, I don't know any successful person that has had like this, just kind of like streamlined into it. It's been like this incredible journey of like, okay, I'm working on this. I've got this down, but then, okay, what about where I am at personally? Okay, I'm good personally. Where do I need to develop in my business? Like just kind of going all around. And especially, for people like us that are like pursuing more and want more and like, okay, this is great, but like, how can I make a better impact? How can I leave a more beautiful imprint? Like okay, in order to do this, I got to do this, So I would definitely, I hope that that's something that I can provide to my audiences watching is just that raw, that open, that like, this is what it is, guys, but come along this journey because it's incredible. Kind of lighthousing it because I have no intention of being a tugboat because I've been a tugboat.
Right.
So, yeah.
So I wanted to go back and talk about the self-love thing that we didn't get to touch on, right? And I know you're really kind of segueing into that right now anyway. So there's so much of what's holding people back that really starts with the idea that they don't feel like they deserve it. They feel like they're not worth it. And this is something that I think that for me, when I want to talk to people and I want to coach people or I want to mentor people, like it's got to start there. Like how did you navigate that? How do you see that How important do you see that being for most people who would have to take and make these changes themselves?
So, man, my journey into self-love has been an internal battle with myself. Like, I'll have, this type of Sascha. I'll have like spiritual Sascha, creative Sascha, perfectionist Sascha, like all in my head, right? Like this internal battle. And, something a mutual friend said is like, somebody has got to table that talk, right? So, I often struggle with it myself to a certain degree, but my journey into it honestly started with 75 Hard. And if you're not familiar with 75 Hard, it's a program that Andy Frisella put together where for 75 days straight, you work out twice a day, you stick to a diet, no alcohol or cheat meals, you have to drink a gallon of water, you have to read 10 pages of a non-fictional book each day. And if you miss any of those steps, you take one bite of a cookie that you're not supposed to have, you miss an ounce of that gallon of water, and you have to start over from day one. Like you start, like if you're on day 60, you mess it up, you got to start back over. So I started, and this is something like I've never done anything this hard. I've never pursued anything, because on top of working a job, on top of my photography, well, I actually had 2 jobs when I started it. So on top of 2 jobs, my photography, I did that. And upon completing it, I noticed something shifted in me where I could look at the mirror and face myself and love the person standing back in the mirror and see the potential in the person staring back at the mirror, because I had pushed myself past something that I never thought I could see myself doing. And so from there, I just started to love more and more of who I was becoming, because I consistently challenged who I was in that moment. And I'm like, okay, how can I challenge myself to be better? How can I be a more beautiful person? And through that process, because I love who I am so much, I'm able to love other people so much. Yeah. Like what I've realized is that I love so, like, I want to go about it in a way that I love you so genuinely and so like right from the get-go. Like I either love you in proximity or I love you from a distance. Like I love you even though I don't want you to eat at my table, like, right. Kind of thing. And just like I've realized that capacity to love other people, because I love who I am and I love who I'm becoming and I love where I'm going and I love this journey, and I'm so grateful for every experience, because I'm doing the hard shit. I've done the hard shit. I've been miserable for so long. I know what it's like to hate who you are and hate hate this journey and just hate and hate people too. Absolutely. And so it's been it's so freeing to let it all go. Yeah. And what I mean by let it go is let go of all that anger and that frustration with yourself and your situation and just go, tomorrow's a new day. Let's start that shit over again and just, try again. And there's so much beauty in just seeing the beauty in every situation. Because,
of course. Do you think there's a connection, and like when you're living in that place of victim mindset mentality, whatever, mm-hmm. that you are in a place of, that you're absent of self-love? Do you think it can exist? Can you be in victim mentality and have self-love?
I don't think so, at least not for me, because when I was just in the trenches of like the victim lifestyle, nothing was ever good enough. I didn't look good in anything. I was ugly in every picture. There was no I don't think I could operate from a place of self-love and still be in the victim mindset lifestyle. Like those two, it wasn't until I got off that victim hamster wheel and started to take accountability. what was freeing for me is taking accountability. Like, I attracted certain people into my life that were not good for me.
Right.
You know,
and you took responsibility and accountability for that.
Yeah. And that's freeing, because at that point I'm like, okay, yes, I did that, you know, and it just, I really don't know how to explain it, but it was so freeing, because so much of my past, like I let people so thoroughly convince me that what I knew happened to me didn't happen. So it was like, and that's with regard to like abusive situations, you know, certain things that have happened in my life that I struggled to acknowledge as true, because in my head, I'm like, okay, this did happen. I need to get through it. This traumatic experience that I had, I need to work through it. But because I was so caught up in the victim mentality, and that like it happened, and you know, that I just need to somehow like bury it like deep down inside, and kept trying to go with that, like, let's just bury it a little deeper method, that nothing, like, you can't plant a flower there. You can't, like, if you're just kind of trying to just bury what happened, and, you know, think that everything is somebody else's fault, and think that there's nothing that you may have done, I just don't see a growing point from there. Like, you know, like it's like an empty map, I guess, when you're kind of in that at least for me. I can't speak for other individuals' experiences, but for me,
Did you have any like specific moments that triggered like this aha moment of, you know what, I need to love myself? What was that?
Well,
did you already share that? I'm sorry if I missed it.
No, I didn't. No, actually, I didn't share it. For me, it's kind of, I'm not sure quite how to share this other than being really raw. Right. I moved in, so I needed to move, and a friend that I had known, he was a really good friend of mine. We had known each other for 10 years, right? Yeah. So I felt wholeheartedly like I knew this person, and I thought from the bottom of my heart I was walking into a safe situation. Yeah. Turns out it was not. You know, I thought at this point, I was like, okay, I'm not attracting toxic or abusive people anymore. I'm doing so good, right? Like, I'm in my head thinking I'm doing so good. Well, it turns out that this person was, I basically have never been more terrified of a man. And I've been hit. I've had holes punched in walls right by my face. You know, like, I've seen some things, right? But this person had other intentions. And one night it turned out to be a very unsafe situation. The next day I had to call the police and, have my stuff escorted out. Fortunately enough for me, so I didn't really have like my family there. I didn't really have a whole lot of people to help me. But fortunately enough for me, and shout out to my ex, like, he rounded up his family. Like, I grabbed some people from work. A lady from my job, she like rounded up her 2 sons, and with the police there, I moved my stuff out in an hour and 15 minutes. And I've moved in the middle of the night, and I've moved fast, but not like that. Yeah. And for me, it was like, looking back now, I have so much gratitude for that situation. Like, if I could see that guy again and just tell him like, hey, thank you for... You have
no idea what you did for my life. Thank you.
You had no idea.
I think that's my biggest question to you right now is like, does it take something? Does it take something? Or can people really just have these aha moments without any kind of traumatic moment, right? And I mean, at least... Like, obviously, I want to think you can. Like, I want to think that you can do this. But can you?
I honestly, for me, if it wasn't for me sitting in court having to listen to this guy try and convince the judge that I was like some crazy psychopath and that he's not some abusive like sociopath, right? Like, to have to sit there and listen to him, because he damn near almost had me convinced, right? I'm sitting in court, almost convinced myself, and it was that
crazy.
Yeah, well,
that's fucking nuts.
Yeah, well, exactly. I'm like sitting here. I'm like, okay, I've got the proof, I've got the evidence, like, I've got the text messages. Like, I had to go through an internal mental checklist to like, and it was that moment for me that it snapped, and it's like, no, you do not have to go through this mental checklist just because he's convinced of his story, and he is entitled to his story, and he has a right to share what he wants to share of the situation, and respectfully, so do I. But no, I don't think for me that required a lot of strength for me, because I have spent so much of my life letting people convince me that I'm wrong, that what happened didn't happen, and convince me to come back into the situation, you know, thinking that it would be different, right? Like, it's like putting like sour milk back in the fridge and then, you know, closing the door, and like an hour later, oh, you know, I think I want a glass of milk. Oh, it's, you know, like it didn't suddenly like fix itself, right? For me, it did take a huge moment. It took, you know, while I'm trying to plan, you know, my escape route without letting him know, you know, because if he had any inkling of what was going on, I know damn well I would have come home and my stuff would have been trashed.
Yeah.
He's unfortunately done it before, to come to find out. But, you know, and I'm sitting there at a photo shoot, right? Because I'm taking pictures of this family came together from all over the US the day of that everything went down. And I'm over here, okay, like contacting the police, getting that scheduled, finishing this shoot, and just how calm I remained through all of it really for me confirmed like, okay, like, again,
Enough is enough.
Enough is enough. Get off this hamster wheel. Like, don't. Like,
did it make you uncomfortable with how conditioned you were to it all? Like, did that?
Yeah. Oh, it like, I still have to like remind myself, because I am so comfortable in that area, and that is so like, I have to remind myself in certain situations, like I have to listen to when my gut tells me like, okay, that person's not good for you. Right. Love them from a distance.
For real.
You know?
All right, so we could chat about this stuff all day long. Right. I'd like to hope that, you know, you guys that are listening, if you haven't like really grabbed a hold of and embraced the idea of self-love and abandoning that victim mentality where you just really have ownership over what you know is in your control, that I really invite you to that place, because I hope that it doesn't take a traumatic moment like what Sascha just explained, and you know, a lot of you guys know my situation and my story and how my life changed. Why wasn't I able to change well before that? Why wasn't Sascha able to change well before that? Well, I hope you guys have heard enough here today and hear enough from other people to really make you make that change, because it's a great place to be in. It's a much happier place. It's a place where you really know that, you know, what you're after in your lifetime is really up to you and is dependent on how much you're willing to work for it. You brought up the desire and the intro and stuff like that a little while ago, but that's the reality of it. Like, how much do you really want what you say you want? How much do you really want what you say you're after? And if that's the case, then you have to embrace these two things that we just talked about and really go after it. So I want you guys to tag along, and I want you to follow Sascha's journey. So Sascha, if you wouldn't mind telling everybody where they can find you on social media.
Just come on to Utah.
Don't be showing up in Utah, guys. It's weird. Okay. But if you can tell them where to follow you on social media and any websites or anything like that where they can follow you at, it'd be great.
For sure. If you want to come down to Utah, we got the weirdest liquor laws ever. That's what we're known for, and mountains. So, I mean, if you're down, feel free. But where you can find me is on Instagram. It's Sascha Milara, and that's just SASCH and then MILARA. Should be pretty easy. If you just type in Sascha, SASCHA, you'll pull me right up. I'm like the only one. I'm pretty sure I am the only one. And then on Facebook as well, just Sascha Milara. And then I do have a website. It's still a bit under construction, so I'll take all the criticism.
Well, this won't air for a few weeks, so you got time.
Oh, sweet. Yes. Okay. I've got time. But it's SaschaMilaraPhoto.com. I mean, I'm on TikTok, but I'm not really like super active on TikTok.
Yeah.
I'm on Clubhouse as well with Bobby. So the same on Clubhouse, Sascha Milara. At least I'm pretty sure. I feel like I need to check now, but
It's okay.
Either one will guide you.
Yeah, we'll put it up on the screen for the people that are watching this via video, but those that are on audio, just be sure to type her name in correctly and it should pop up. So awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, Sascha. Hopefully this is one of many times you visit the Extra Mile podcast. And I want to thank all of you for listening, and tune in next time for another great episode of the Extra Mile podcast. Thanks, guys.
Your success is on the other side of your comfort zone. See, that's the difference between me and those other guys. I wanted it more than they did. I wanted it enough to get uncomfortable. I wanted it enough to go the extra mile. Do you want it bad enough? Do you want it bad enough to go the extra mile?